So that's a huge undertaking, right? And the airport is a beast.
Yeah.
The airline industry probably won't crash and burn sooner than we need to have greenhouse gas reductions happen, right? So, but there are going to be some real serious issues about how to formally integrate the port and its process into that. And so, toward that end, Council President Jane Brunner is really interested in seeing that happen, and we're thinking of strategically having her write a letter on behalf of the City of Oakland with other signatories to get the Port Commission to then adopt a resolution that would formally integrate them into the process. That's the plan.
Okay, so then I guess I now have kind of a two-part question, which is, where did was it 36% in 2000, where did that number come from?
Good question.
Is there a sense that we know how we're going to get there? That's part one. And then part two, does that include the Port of Oakland, which is in the city, or is it really about the city of Oakland?
Okay, yep. Where did that 36% below 2005 levels by 2020 come from? Well, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, in one of their latest reports, determined that industrial nations needed to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions by 25 to 40% below 1990 levels by 2020. Now, so 25 to 40%. Now, the issue was, with respect to Oakland, just adopting that, is that they don't know what their 1990 level emissions are. So there was an exercise that we went through, and that the city of Oakland also went through, where we used existing data for 2005. We used information for what 1990 levels of greenhouse gases in California and in 2005 were. So we looked at state, and then we looked at the city levels, and determined that 36% below 2005 levels by 2020 is approximately equivalent to 25% below 1990 levels by 2020.
So it's minimal.
So it's the lower end. We actually, as a coalition, had recommended that the city go with the higher end, which would have been more like 46% below 2005 levels. But we were really happy that they decided to go with 36%, just because at least it was within the bounds of what the IPCC had recommended. And the second part of your question, is that just for the city and not the port? The answer is yes. And what our job now is to bring the port into the process. And there is a question on the table as to, does it make sense to have that exact same target for the port? Because I guess there is some thought that they may have many less options available for controlling some of their emissions, especially from the airport. So anyway, we're trying to bring them into the process, and we'll see whether that number is the one that the port eventually adopts.
I don't think they've got their algae fuel jet packs yet.
Also, in those goals, isn't there built in a way to review those numbers based on climate science, which is that got built?
Yeah, in both Berkeley and Oakland, we were pushing and eventually had adopted the idea that the goals that these programs go for, both in Berkeley and Oakland, are reviewed every year based on whatever climate science is available and adjusted accordingly. So if 3 or 4 or 5 years from now things change with respect to the science of climate change, global warming, then we're expecting that Berkeley and Oakland will take a look at that and adjust their goals in accordance.
Well, we would need to make them do that.
Yes, and if they don't by themselves, then that'll be our job. We'll try to push that through.
We've probably got time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions before we need to move on to our guests here today. Are there any others? Yeah.
I'll take one. I remember a few months ago I was looking at a pie chart that showed percentage sources of different greenhouse gas significant portion of it, was simply the traffic passing through on the freeways. Is that included? Because I have no idea how you touch that.
Yeah, it is included.
Wow.
And yeah, a number of different strategies are being talked about in terms of like incentives for car sharing and congestion management fees. That's a county level decision. Toll roads within the city, that kind of stuff. Yeah. So infinite number of possibilities there, but also increasing the bike and pedestrian and walkway opportunities. Great.
Well,
so,
one more quick one then.
Okay.
Just, do we know what portion of the port's emission load is from the airport?
So there's an inventory that's being done, not a comprehensive one. We're calling for a much more comprehensive one to be done so that we can answer that question. Great. So there are several things that folks can do to get engaged with the Oakland Climate Action Coalition, other than attending meetings on the second Thursday of each month. Again in the morning, 9:30 to 11:30 at the Workforce Collaborative. There is also a major community convergence for climate action happening at Laney College on November 18th, which is kind of a culminating event for all of the efforts that have been happening around the Oakland Climate Action Coalition. And you all are invited to attend. And if folks are interested, I would encourage you to, as I pass this around, which is also a petition to the city, showing your support for these goals and for the city to enact a strong climate action plan. If you would indicate on here that you'd be interested in attending the November 18th event, just put a little star by your name, something like that, so that we know that you're interested in attending. And other than that, just please feel free to stay afterward and ask Dave and I or any questions you may have, and we'd love to have you get engaged.